All right, welcome back to the painting part 3. Part 2. Jackson has just made it to Mackenzie and they are now both looking for Cam. Ooh, excuse me. They are now looking for Cam. Well, they were. And at this point, now Cam is missing for real, but he's in the house. There's no sign of him leaving the house. He's somewhere in this house, but they don't know where in this house. So now they're sitting at the kitchen table and Jackson has something to tell Mackenzie. And Mackenzie is at this point over it. She wants to know where her husband is. That's it. That's all. Just tell me what's going on now, because at this point, how bad can it be? And here we are. Part 3 of the painting by Miyano Aki. Jackson says, when we were in college, we studied the Haitian Revolution. At the time we were freshmen, we were not really taking shit too seriously. But this subject piqued our interest. Since Cam's parents died, he always talked about a guy named Baron who talked to him in his dreams. So we did some research and it led us to Haitian voodoo. And that is when we found out who the Baron was and what his purpose was, as well as his power and his gifts. One thing led to another, and on our summer vacation before junior year, we went to Haiti and we got initiated. Jackson paused for a second just to let that marinate with Mackenzie. Well, Jackson nor Cameron knew that she was practicing with her grandmother and daughter again for a couple of years now. But not hard though. Just a few rituals and libations. He looked Kenzie into her light brown eyes and he saw the light bulb come on. He said, "Yes, ma'am. We are ordained and initiated priests. Now, during junior year, up until your wedding, we were practicing very heavily. I mean, how do you think we worked out without getting caught all the time?" He shrugged his shoulders and continued with Mackenzie hanging on to every word. During his bachelor party, unbeknownst to you, we had a ceremony with the ancestors and the elders celebrating the union of his exit out of the dope game. He was possessed by our father, the Baron. It was not the first time it happened, but this time was different. Instead of the mannerisms that he usually presented before handing out blessings to our family, he actually spoke through him, and he looked like him, like he transformed into him. Jackson paused and shuddered before he continued on because it spooked him. Just the memory of it. We all looked at him, all bugged out and almost afraid of Cam. Most times, if the spirit rides you for so long, they take over and the body can't handle the power that they harness, so the vessel ends up dying. So naturally, we were afraid at first. But that night, I know for sure that I have only seen the Baron in my dreams, and that's it. And that is how I knew that he was possessed for real. Jackson put his head down and sighed deeply. He spoke to each of us, telling us what it is that we should be doing and how we should do certain things differently. He also spoke blessings on Cameron, Jacqueline, and your sex life. Jackson laughed loudly before he lit the wood that he had rolled minutes ago. The things he said that night were very true and very comical though. After a couple of hours of dancing, smoking Cuban cigars, and drinking rum, we ended the night, but the Baron was still present within Cameron. He was just sitting in the wicker chair next to his altar, smoking a cigar. Then all of a sudden, he fell forward out of the chair on his hands and knees and started to gag and dry heave. We ran to him. I tried to touch his back, but it was so hot, it was just too hot for me to touch him. I backed away and told the others to do the same. Nothing came out of him though, not like the normal. And after a couple of minutes of him doing that, he just stopped. We got quiet and just looked at him. He rose up, rubbed his head, and asked what happened. He didn't remember anything after we lit the candles at the beginning of the ceremony. We never talked about it after that day. Excuse me. Mackenzie looks at Jackson with her mouth open, waiting for the rest of the story. Her eyebrows raised and said, so... Jackson said, so we still have ceremonies and celebrations on celebration days. That is what we do when I come get him late at night. Thing is, he has moved up in ranks of our spiritual family. So much so that he's doing initiations. He can divine without tools of any sort. He is a Hogan now. Did you know about the 13 cemeteries that he owns? And he owns 14 mortuaries also. And he also has one of his mortuaries that is designated only to hold all his ceremonies. I don't know if he and the Baron has made a deal or that he is just favored by him and the ancestors, because this isn't the first time that he's ever seen the Baron, he says. The Baron has always been with him, and he's told him this since his parents had died. Excuse me. His gifts grew just overnight, literally. He speaks to the dead. He can also make them speak to him before they're prepared for their funerals. Our godfather, Baba Timothy, is very proud of him because he is now of the same rank as him, if not higher. Jackson says with his hands out in front of him, palms up. Mackenzie put her hands in his and said, so you mean to tell me my husband is a voodoo high priest and he has not told me a thing? She puts her head down and seems to question everything. She knows about their religion very well. Her mother was a priestess of Oya. She has seen what it can do and what the spirits are capable of. She is not afraid of it, not at all. But she just chooses to secretly practice. She honors her ancestors as well as Oya, her godmother Oshun, and her godfather Babalu Aye. She pours her libations as well. That is just about as deep as she will allow herself to get into the religion, besides the fact that she uses her power through her godfather to work as a practitioner and owner of 2 hospice facilities to watch over the sick and help guide them to the ancestor realm. Kizzy blew out a long sigh and came to the realization that her husband was trying to keep her safe in his own way. Jackson started to speak again in a quieter tone. Now, I know about your mom, so I know that you are familiar with what I'm saying to you. I need you to hear me when I tell you this. He looked Mackenzie in her eyes so deeply that she understood him, just so she could understand very well what he's about to tell her. I know you may not believe this, but Cam is in that studio. He pointed at the open door. I can feel him in there. I know for sure that he is definitely in there. We just have to go back down there and take a closer look at everything in there. That painting you were talking about earlier is indeed the House of the Guedes. That is an actual place. Excuse me. Jackson squeezed Kenzie's hands. Those spirits are no joke. Not at all, sis. When I tell you, they do what they want to do anywhere, and I mean anywhere. Little does he know is that she already knew that part. Jack lets her hands go, and they lost eye contact. Mackenzie takes her bonnet off and rubs her braids from scalp to tips. This is not what she signed up for when she said her vows, and it said for better or for worse, and this is definitely the worst. She saw the signs the longer that they were together, but the studio. Wait a minute, let me come back. She saw the signs the longer they were together, but in that studio she went down there, she saw some more. The way he had started dressing, the black suits, or the red and purple ties, the hats. He picked up cigar smoking. He even started drinking cognac and rum only. He stopped drinking tequila. Excuse me. She didn't say anything. She thought it was just something that he chose to pick up after he stopped selling drugs and chose to be a businessman full time. And to be perfectly honest, it turned her on even more. She knew her husband was a fine specimen of a man in her eyes, but all of a sudden, the maturing he was doing made him the sexiest man ever to her. Tall, chocolate, lean but cut, and every muscle on his body was ripped. To her, he looked like a god. Jackson gets up and walks over to the liquor cabinet and grabs a glass and a bottle of Flor de Cana 25 and shuts the door. He shook his head and walks over to the freezer, puts 2 cubes of ice in the glass and fills the glass over halfway full. Then he comes back to the table and sits both the glass and the rum on the table. He says, "We're going to have to go back down there. But first, we're going to have to drink this here." He taps the glass of the cognac until it's enough to fill this glass. He taps the other glass with the ice full again. He points at the glass of rum on the table. "Also, I need you to get some peppers and 3 cigars for us." Mackenzie looks at him, about to question him, but instead she nods her head, grabs the glass, and chugs the rum down. She slams the glass down and taps it 3 times with her long French stiletto nail. "Pour me up another and I'll be right back." She went into the garage, and after a few minutes, she came back with some ghost peppers, Apollo peppers, and some habanero peppers. She also had 3 Cuban cigars. Mackenzie had all of them to Jackson and sits back down. Jackson slid the glass to her and broke down one of the cigars. He rolls a blunt with the cigar that he broke down and puts the 2 remaining cigars in the ashtray. He gets back up and grabs another glass of liquor from the cabinet and comes back to the table. As they smoke the blunt that Jackson rolled in silence, they drink the rum down. When the blunt was out, Jackson placed all the peppers in the empty glass on the table. He then poured the remaining rum on the glass with the peppers. He used his fingers to stir the liquid around. To Mackenzie, it looked like he was in a trance because he isn't blinking and he is continuously stirring the rum and breathing heavily. Once he's finished, he takes his finger out and puts it in his mouth and sucks the spicy rum off his finger. He didn't even make a face when he did it. Mackenzie drinks the rest of the rum in her glass and looks over at Jackson to make sure he's okay. He looked over at her and said, "I'm good, sis. You good?" She nodded her head and says, "Hell no. I know that shit was spicy as fuck." Jackson laughed out heartily and he said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm okay. I do this at least 4 times a week. This is the offering that we are going to present to the Baron, as well as the cigars that are in the ashtray. Now, sweet sister of mine, are you ready to go find my brother?" Mackenzie simply says yes. And they both got up and headed back down the steps into the studio. Once they reach the bottom of the steps, the door shuts itself, hard and fast. Kenzie jumps and turns around to look at the door. She points at the symbol that is painted on the back of the door that she never knew that was on the back of the door. "Isn't that the Veve for Papa Legba?" she says matter-of-factly. Jackson just nodded his head and started to look around. "Kenzie, can you light this cigar and put it in that ashtray over there? Take the ashtray with the cigar in it and put it on the top of the step in front of the door." Kenzie does what she is told. "Okay, now." He hands her the bottle of rum. She notices that there was a little liquid in the bottle, just enough to fill the corner of the bottle. "Go back to the door and pour the rest of the rum in your mouth. Hold it there and think of the spiritual gates opening up to you. Think of the reason why we are here and spit out the rum onto the door. Make it look like you're spraying the door with this rum that is in your mouth." Kenzie takes the bottle and does exactly what she is told. As the hot liquid is in her mouth, she feels a chill going up her spine slowly. When the chill gets up to the top of her head, it makes her jerk her head. She lunges forward and spits out the rum onto the door from top to bottom. She backs down the steps slowly. Jackson wants to laugh, but he stifles it. "Come on, girl." He took another observative look around the room. "I'm glad that there are candles lit. Go to the sink and look in the cabinet and grab a shot glass." Jackson, pointing at the cabinet that was to their left on the far wall, looked at him in disbelief. He noticed the look and said, "It's part of my gifts. So no, I have not been in here just like you haven't been in here. There are things that the spirits tell me that better help me to help others in their time of need." Kenzie did just as she was told. Then she raises the glass to him and laughed. "Cheers!" She almost dropped the shot glass. She thought she heard some laughter on the other side of the room where the stain was. Jackson laughed this time. He is here in this space already. It's like he never left or something. Jackson looked puzzled as he said this, and that made Mackenzie even more nervous. He breathed in deep, lung-filling breath and blew it out all the way. He did that 2 more times and started moaning and humming in an old African tune. The room got brighter by the candlelight. Mackenzie thought she heard drums from far off. Jackson sat in a lotus position in the middle of the floor. He lit the other cigar that was in the ashtray he was holding and started smoking it, blowing large clouds of smoke in the room. He put the cigar in the ashtray to continue to smoke. He then put the cigar in the ashtray to continue to burn. Jackson then sips the hot rum that had the peppers in it and sprayed it all around himself and motioned Kenzie to sit right across from him. He then sprayed her with the rum and pepper mixture. He set it beside the ashtray also. He continued to hum and sway from side to side to a beat that she and he could only hear, and it got loudly, and she knew as well that he heard it. As Jackson was humming and swaying, Mackenzie was feeling dizzy and lightheaded from everything that she had consumed throughout the night. The drums were in the same room with them as it sounded, and Jackson got up and started to dance. He sang, "Baba Legba, grant my sister and I passage to the other side to speak with my father, please. I come humbly and with offerings for both of you." He puts his hands up. "What I see, she may see as well. What I hear, she may hear as well. And what I feel, she may feel also. Ashe." He sits back down in front of her in the lotus position and continues to sway and starts to hum a different, more upbeat tune. The beat of the drums picked up as well, and it grew louder and louder. Kenzie's body starts to get warm, and she started to sway as well because the drum just felt like it was in her ears. She had a warm and exhilarating feeling come over her, and she got up to dance, rocking and rolling her small hips and round butt. Jackson calls upon the Baron in song. "Baba, can you hear me? I see guidance. Guidance from my brother. Guidance to find my brother." He has his hands up and still swaying and humming. The air starts to feel different. Then all of a sudden a dark figure appeared. Tall, slender man with a top hat and a cane. Each time Mackenzie looked at him, the more she could see him. But for the life of her, she could not stop dancing. The closer the figure got, she could see the 3-piece pinstripe black suit, the small bones surrounding the base of his top hat. He had a black button-up suit under the vest. Under it was a vest with a red handkerchief in the pocket of the jacket. He had on sunglasses, but one of the lenses was missing. His exposed eye was something that no one, not even she, could explain. He was still handsome and had a sexy yet sinister smile that he had as he approached them. He tilted his head at Mackenzie and said, "Mackenzie," like he knew her, and that made her stop dancing. It was something way too familiar with that. He then turned to Jackson and leaned against his cane and said, "How may I ask, can I help you, my son?" The Baron said while looking at Mackenzie and smiling seductively. Her body was calling for her to dance, so she had to. She couldn't stop herself. Her body felt and moved like water. Swaying to the drum beat, the Baron knelt over and grabbed a glass of rum and peppers and a cigar that was still lit. After taking a sip of the hot mixture of rum and hot peppers, he smiled and said, "Now this right here is good." He laughed a very deep and loud laugh while walking around Jackson and Mackenzie. He puts the cigar in his mouth and swirls the glass of spicy mixture around. Jackson said, "We're looking for one of your sons, Cameron Alexander."